Okay, so this is not going to be a full lecture of the notes for 10.2. I'm going to go ahead and let you pull all the vocabulary and all the labeling and everything off of the static notes that are posted to my school web. What I'm going to do is I'm just going to go through some of the example problems with you so you can hear those. So again, off of notes, you can go ahead and write all these down. All right, so let's start with example 1 here. So in example 1, it says find the standard equation of parabola with this vertex and the focus. So the very first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to sketch these 2 points so I can kind of see what I'm dealing with. So if I have a vertex at 3, 2, there's my vertex, and my focus is at 1, 2. So now my focus is going to be over here. So there's my focus, there's my vertex. So now what I know is I know that my parabola goes through my vertex and wraps around my focus. So I have a left-facing parabola. So the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to write down the general form of that, and that's going to be my x equals a y minus k squared plus h. So I know that's the one I'm dealing with. And furthermore, I know that my vertex is h and k. So I know that. So I'm feeling pretty good there. So what I really need to know is I need to know what a is. And the way that I find a is I look for p because they are related. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find p. And p is the distance between my focus and my vertex. That distance is p. And in this case, it's a distance from 1 to 3, which is 2. So p is 2. The way that helps me is I know that my relationship between p and a is I know that p equals 1 over 4a. And I know that that is true. And that means if I actually go and solve this for a, and there's a long, complicated way to do this, but basically, I know that 4p equals 1 over a, so I know that a equals 1 over 4p. So in this case, I would know that a is 1/8. And because I know that my parabola opens to the left, I know that it's actually a negative 1/8 in this case. So now I have everything that I need to be able to write my equation. So I'm going to write x equals negative 1/8 y minus 2 squared plus 3. Be careful not to mix up your h and your k when you're putting them into that equation. And that's all there is to this one. Okay, so for this example here, in example 2, I have to find the focus. So the very first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to find the vertex. And the vertex of this parabola is going to be negative 2, negative 1/3. So that's awesome. And then I need to find p. So again, p is 1 over 4a, and a is negative 1/6. So it's going to be 1 over 4 times negative 1/6, which is going to be 1 over negative 4/6. Which is going to be negative 3 over 2. Now the negative, if I were actually asking you for what p was, you would tell me that p is 3/2 as your final answer, because p is a distance, so it's always going to be positive. But in this case, the negative, this negative that's out in front, it tells me that this parabola, it opens down. So my focus is going to be below my vertex. So I'm going to take my vertex, and the x-coordinate is going to stay the same, but the y-coordinate, I'm going to subtract p from it. And so I need to make a common denominator. And so this will be negative 2, 6, and this will be, what was that, 9, 6. And so my final answer winds up being negative 2, negative 11, 6. And that is going to be my focus. All right, so let's talk about how we complete the scoring. Now, we just did this in Chapter 2, so it wasn't that long ago. And if you remember, we're going to skip A for a second because it's not that hard. Let's go ahead and let's take a look at B to just remember the general process. So I'm going to take it, and I'm going to group my first 2 terms, and then I'm going to leave that third term out there outside the parentheses. And then I'm going to figure out, I take half my middle term, so this will be y minus 4. And then that squared value goes right here. And then since I added 16, I'm now going to subtract 16 to keep my equation balanced, and I get minus 36. So if I had to find my vertex for this, which is kind of the point of putting it into vertex form, then it would be negative 36, comma 4. Let's take a look at C. So C has the little added benefit of having a leading coefficient. So if you remember how we do this, we have to first factor out that leading coefficient. I'm going to go ahead and factor out a negative 1 just to make it really obvious that it's sitting out there. So I get x squared, and then that changes my sign of that middle term. But because I didn't factor it out of my third term, that term stays the same. So again, same process. I got to keep that -1 sitting out there, half my middle term, so now it's +2. That squared is 4. But what I really did was I have 4 times -1. So what I really added was -4. So now I need to add +4. So now I've got plus 25. And if I were to look at my vertex here, it would be -2, 25. Now I'm going to go ahead and do the D, E, and F, and then go ahead and check your answers against what is written on the static notes that are posted online. All right, so if I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to graph this parabola, the first thing I need to do is I need to make sure it's in my standard form, so this is -1/2 y squared. All right, so my vertex, because I have nothing added or subtracted to my two terms, is going to be the point 0, 0. The next thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to figure out what P is. And so P is 1/4a, which means I get 4 times 1/2, which is going to be 2. So again, I get 1/2. And then this parabola is a sideways opening parabola. I know that because it starts with x equals, and it's going to open to the left, which I know because I have a negative value for a. So I'm going to go 1/2 to the left, and that is going to be my focus. And I'm sorry, my stylus is not terribly accurate. So my focus is going to be located at -1/2, 0. And then 1/2 to the right is going to be my directrix. So my directrix is going to be the line x equals, and it's going to equal +1/2. And then what I'm going to do is to actually graph my parabola. Normally I have to have 5 points, but when we're doing it in this type, we can go ahead and we can, from our focus, we can go 2p up and 2p down. So since p is 1/2, 2p is 1, so I'm going to go 1 up and I'm going to go 1 down. And then I can just go ahead and I can, wow, I'm way off on my stylus. Sorry about that, guys. I can go ahead and I can plot my parabola. So let me see what else we have. We have the axis of symmetry, which my AOS is going to be it's going to be y equals. Let's try that again. Y equals 0. And that's my parabola graphed. Hopefully you guys do a better job than I did. Sorry about that again. Okay, and in example 3 here, let's go ahead and find an equation parabola with a vertex and a focus. So again, I'm going to start by sketching. So my vertex is located at 1, 3, and my focus is located at 1, 6. So that tells me that I have a parabola that is going to open up, which means I'm going to use my equation y equals a, x minus h squared plus k. And I know that my vertex is hk right here. So all I have to figure out is a. Again, I'm going to figure out what p is, and in this case p is 3, which means that my LR is 4p, which is 12, and then a is the reciprocal of LR. This is the other way you can do it, so a is 1/LR, and so a is going to be 1/12. So now I can write y equals 1/12, and then I have x minus 1 squared plus 3. And that's all there is to that one. If you have any questions, make sure you ask. Remember that the homework for this is homework 28 and homework 29. One of those is the 7.1 to 3 homework, which is nothing more than systems of equations. And we don't have notes on those because you've been doing them since Algebra 1, but you need to practice them because you will need to occasionally solve systems to find pieces of your conics. So good luck with that.